Hungary has emphasized family policy and support for having and raising children since 2010, and the former Hungarian government has developed a rather complex family policy package, which includes a number of concrete measures. We had more than 30 measures.
Dr. Georgina Kiss-Kozma, it's a real joy to talk to you today. People who don't know you, you are Deputy Director of a Youth Research Institute in Hungary, and you've done lots of research around youth, the key determinant of our success as a culture going forward in the Western world, and all sorts of things around aspirations towards marrying and children and all that sort of thing. So welcome to the Coalition for Marriage YouTube channel. Welcome to the podcast. Pleasure to talk to you. Please just take a moment and maybe say hi to our viewers and our listeners. Tell us a little bit about your institute and the work that you do.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a great pleasure to speak about these topics as well. The Institute was founded in 2021 by Matthias Corvinus Collegium here in Hungary to better understand younger generations in Hungary and Central Europe. Our main focus is on studying Hungarian youth across a wide range of topics, from education and cultural identity to social behavior and political engagement. We also aim to share our findings with a wider audience through publications, conferences, and media.
And it was when you were doing that, in fact, that we came across each other, which is great. And I wanted to use this opportunity for you to share some more of your findings too. Obviously, you know, our future is built on the youth of today going forward, and our best interests are in the best version of the next generation. And the things that lead to that. And we as Coalition for Marriage would say, well, the information is quite clear that marriage is a pretty good enabler to the best outcomes for kids. Tell us about your personal research. Tell us about what's been going on in Hungary. A lot's been going on recently because of the recent political changes, but maybe tell us about your research over the recent years and what you've found.
Yeah, I try to focus on demography, and we regularly ask young people about their future plans and family formation plans because, you know, demography may seem like a slow-moving, almost invisible force, yet it shapes everything around us. It influences economic growth, the sustainability of pension systems, the stability of labor markets, social cohesion, and even the geopolitical weight of entire continents. So when we speak about demography, we are speaking about the future. So if we look at the global picture, we see that the world is undergoing a historic demographic transition. More than half of all countries now have fertility rates below the replacement level of 2.1 children per woman. Women worldwide have, on average, one fewer child than they did in 1990. And at the same time, life expectancy continues to rise. As a result, society is aging rapidly. In the coming decades, the number of elderly people will exceed the number of children globally. And Europe is at the center of this demographic change. 50 years ago, Europe represented about 20% of the world's population. Today, it represents less than 10%. Demography, therefore, is not only a social issue, but also a strategic one. And I firmly believe that each of us should try to answer this question at least once in our lifetime. Why do we need children? We need them as a society because if we don't have enough children, sooner or later nations will face serious economic consequences and unprecedented crises. If you follow the case of South Korea, for instance, you will realize that so few children are born then every year that, according to some demographers, if this trend doesn't change, South Korea could be the first culture to collapse. And not because of a war or a pandemic, but because of the most serious crisis of modern times, the childlessness. And we need children as human beings, as men and women, because raising children is the most important goal in our everyday lives. The latter is particularly important as young people increasingly suffer from uncertainty, unpredictable future, and loneliness. But what we are talking about here is a real threat to our civilization itself. And we know that young people will determine the society of the future. And these turbulent times, the willingness to have children also generally declines. Young people tend to postpone starting a family, which ultimately leads to fewer children being born. So this is why I think that we should focus on this topic and focus on young people.
Yeah, and massive bunch of issues you've raised there, Georgina. But so what some people would say in response is, well, actually, we can just import people from other countries to make up for the gap. Excuse number one. Excuse number two is, well, there's too many people, climate change, too many people. Actually, we need fewer people anyway. And then number three, interestingly, well, if Elon Musk is right, in the next few years, we will have 1 billion or more humanoid robots taking over lots of the stuff that people do. So we don't need so many people anyway. So there are a lot of people who will say it's not the problem you're saying it is. Climate change, robots, and we can import people from other countries to fill the gaps locally anyway. How would you respond to that?
If a country has persistently low fertility and at the same time wishes to preserve a relatively homogeneous society without significant immigration, it will likely face economic stagnation and a higher old age dependency ratio. Japan is often mentioned as an example of this model. If a country has persistently low fertility and at the same time wishes to maintain economic growth, it will usually rely on large-scale immigration to fill labor shortages. However, this approach fundamentally transforms the cultural and social composition of the host society and may generate long-term integration challenges. The third theoretical way is to sustain economic dynamism while maintaining cultural homogeneity by increasing fertility rates. This option is probably the most difficult because we know that fertility trends are deeply rooted in social norms and economic expectations, yet it is the strategy Hungary has chosen to follow. So, recognizing this historical challenge, the former Hungarian government chose a different way to tackle demographic problems after 2010, when it decided to build an innovative, comprehensive family support system and put families with children at the center of its future policy vision. Hungary has emphasized family policy and support for having and raising children since 2010, and the former Hungarian government has developed a rather complex family policy package, which includes a number of concrete measures. We had more than 30 measures. To mention just a few, tax benefits for families and first-time married couples, but the most famous measure was the personal income tax exemption for mothers with 4 or more children. And we have measures to promote home ownership for families, for instance, the family housing benefit, family housing subsidy. So the Hungarian family policy is based on 3 main pillars: to make parenthood financially advantageous and attractive for young people, to provide housing, and the third pillar is to reconciliation of work and family life.
So before we have a little look, and an amazing range of policies there, and when my wife heard about the tax-free status for 4 children, she was very excited to hear about that. But not the case over here, I might add. Before we look at the results of that, if you like, it was one thing you raised single parents, and one of the issues we've got over here, we have something called a benefits gap, really, whereby a low-income family, a mother or the family as a whole could lose as much as £10,000 UK pounds in benefits if the mother moves in with the father of her children. Yep. And so it's almost like state-sponsored fatherlessness. It's the state paying you £10,000 to live apart, which cannot be right. But how do you then balance the need to look after single parents. And you may not know the answer to this, but how do you balance the need to look after single parents? You don't want a child to grow up with poverty, with the fact that you also want to encourage and promote families staying together and raising their kids together, because we know that in the long term, that promotes best outcomes for children. So how do you, and also you don't necessarily want to encourage single parents intentionally being single parents in order to get benefits, or in order to get housing, which some people will say happens in the UK, because, if you've got children, you'll get benefits and you're more likely to get on the housing ladder, especially the state housing ladder, especially if there isn't a partner on hand. So how do you balance the two of not letting children grow up in poverty with single parents, yet promoting families staying together and raising their kids like that?
I firmly believe that this is the reason why we should focus on youngsters, young people. So we conducted many research on these topics, and I can tell you that youngsters seem to believe in the concept of the traditional family formation. So we should support youngsters how to prepare themselves for marriage and raising children. Of course, we should support, or the government or the state should support single parent families. But on the other hand, it is also very important to support young people.
Yeah, and you can do the same thing in different ways. You can have tax allowances for families, etc. So there isn't such a stark change when somebody on a low income actually lives with the mother and the father live together. It's not such a big impact. So tell us a little bit more. I mean, you mentioned that children, young people in Hungary, much like young people in the UK and in fact in the US, they still aspire to get married, and Gen Z even more so than the previous generation. It's almost like they've seen the futility of what's been going on around them and the hedonistic nature of just live for yourself and ignore everything, and they want to settle down according to the stats. So, and I think you found that in your research, is that correct?
It is a tough call, because on the one hand, based on our data, we can conclude that young people living in Hungary would like to get married at some point in their future. They consider marriage very important, and for instance, in 2020, most of youngsters in Hungary believed that it is not possible to lead a fulfilled and happy life without children. But as the population in Hungary is shrinking and getting older, and the trends of the last decades show that young people are having children later and later, which increases the likelihood that not all planned and desired children can be born, it is important to examine the reasons why young people's plans to start a family are not realized. If it is important to have children, then the question arises as to what the obstacles are. And one such external obstacle could be that most of young people, especially young women, believe that they have to choose between a career and children. Yeah. We can also see what they need in order to have children. First and foremost, a good financial situation, their own home, a good relationship, a supportive work environment, and majority for parenthood and marriage. The third most frequently mentioned factor is the right relationship. So it is not a big surprise, because if you want to start a family, you need to find the right partner. We also asked them what kind of outside help would help them to find the right partner. And more than a third of young people named suitable community places where young people can meet others. A quarter said well-functioning internet dating sites would help, and the fifth named well-organized dating clubs. So based on the previous data, we examined the topic of relationship and online dating in early 2024. We wanted to know how young people think about relationship and online dating. And the vast majority of young people believed that it is not easy to find a relationship these days. They say that nowadays it is difficult to find suitable and accessible community places where young people can meet with others. And also most of them don't believe that using online dating platforms is the best way to build a relationship. But what you mentioned, we conducted research in the last year. Our aim was to compare the future and family formation plans of young people living in the United States and in Hungary. And in the United States, our data collection partner was the Signal. And yes, we see that both in Hungary and in the United States, young people would like to get married and they consider it is important to have children. But we also see that there are many obstacles.
Yeah. So what it's interesting, isn't it? Because you've mentioned media a few times, and the thing that often comes up is the career children thing, the lack of understanding about fertility windows. That nobody seems to know that the optimum fertility age is for women anyway is 24, and it goes downhill after that. And so the theory of establishing your career first and then having children later isn't working for a lot of people, because they're realizing that becomes very hard once you get over 30. And it becomes quite a challenge. You might have one, but it's hard to have more than one, for example. And the longer you lead it, the harder that gets. And people not realizing that. So media is part of the problem, which you've mentioned several times. But I'm wondering, looking at and I know you've written about this as well, looking at the success rates in Hungary, which between 2011, the early 2020s, was going in the right direction. Yep. In terms of many more marriages, fewer divorces, fewer abortions, more children, all looking great. But it seems to have taken a little dip recently, according to the evidence you've cited and written about. Do you have any ideas why the kind of dip happened, and did something change? What's your feel on all that?
Yes, before turning to the policy or my answer, I think that it is important to clarify an important difference between demographic processes and family policy. Demographic processes describe long-term measurable changes in the size and the structure of a population. These changes happen naturally, shaped by economic conditions, cultural values, historical experiences, and social trends. And they develop gradually, and their effects appear over decades rather than immediately. Family policy, by contrast, it is about government decisions and measures designed to influence the circumstances of families and support people who want to start a family. So these are political decisions that can be implemented relatively quickly and aim to achieve specific results, such as increasing the number of children born. I want to point this out because for exactly this reason, it is a tough call to judge how effective a family policy is in the short term. It is crucial to understand that the decision to have children is influenced not only by policy, but also by a complex mix of cultural, economic, and social factors. So in the area of family policy, the short-term effects of the Hungarian government's measures were clearly positive until recently, as you have mentioned. In Hungary, the willingness to have children and to marry has increased the most in the EU between 2010 and 2021. The proportion of children born in wedlock has also increased. The number of divorces with children has fallen, and the number of abortions has almost halved during this period of time. And the fertility indicators have improved. For instance, the fertility rate in 2011 was 1.23, and it was 1.6 in 2023. But in recent years, the COVID pandemic, the war in Ukraine, the energy crisis, and economic difficulties on a global scale have also shaken families' sense of security, which is reflected in the figures after 2021. Against this backdrop, I firmly believe that family policy must remain a priority area for Hungarian politics in the future. The family policy requires patience and long-term consistency, so it cannot produce immediate miracles. Having a child remains one of the most personal decisions in life. The state cannot force young people to start a family, but it can create a stable and supportive environment in which families feel secure enough to realize their aspirations.
Yeah, and that's the key thing. It takes time, and it's a cultural thing because you often want to do what the people around you are doing, and you look at. And interestingly enough, as well, I think in the UK, the people who are having children are having approximately the same number of children, but more people are having no children. And so that's the interesting change in the demographics here. And I think it's similar in Hungary. And that very much is a cultural thing. Seeing the people around you, seeing what's on the media, and so you're right. There's like 30 different things which influence over a long period of time how the culture changes, and you're absolutely right about all of that. So, I mean, to kind of wrap up and conclude, because I know you're busy, and we'll hopefully talk more about this at some point in the future. But how do you think the current political changes? Do you know how the current political changes are going to affect all this going forward? Will things carry on? Will the experiment keep running? Are things going to change? Have there been any signs? What's your view on all that?
Right now, it is hard to tell, but I firmly believe that the new Hungarian government knows that that demography is our future. So we should support young people, and I also believe that the Hungarian family policy was effective because all of these measures try to focus on young people. So they wanted to know how young people think about their future, what the main obstacles are. As I have already mentioned, young people think that they need help. They want to feel themselves insecure. So I firmly believe that our policy will continue in the future. It is, of course, a very difficult task because it is not just about policy, and we also see that the youth life stage both expanded and changed in the last couple of decades. But I firmly believe that if we want to solve or tackle the demographic problems, we need to focus on young people. So hopefully the Hungarian government will continue this family policy.
Great. I mean, that is the inevitable truth, isn't it? That young people are our future, whichever way it goes, right?
Right.
So that's absolutely right. Georgina, what a privilege to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time, and keep up the great work.
Thank you so much for having me.